I'm glad to have a chance to give a status report of Taiwan's cloud computing industry. My name is Tzi-Cker Chiueh, and I work for Cloud Computing Research Center in Egypt, which is, think of it as a national lab for Taiwan. So before I go into that, I just want to briefly describe what cloud computing is. We all know there are three major service models in cloud computing. Down below is a so-called infrastructure as a service, IaaS. And then in the middle is a platform as a service, PaaS. And then on the top is a software as a service, SaaS. Right? So IaaS is basically about IT infrastructure. You virtualize the IT infrastructure and provide that virtualized IT infrastructure to the customer. The most famous example is Amazon Web Service. Platform as a service, you not only provide bare-bone IT infrastructure, you provide the middleware and all the operating environment. So that's called platform. The most important famous example is Google's App Engine or Windows, Microsoft's Windows Azure. And then on the top is what everybody knows as cloud application and cloud services. So there are a lot of players in that space. Now, when Taiwan plans to enter this cloud computing industry 3 years ago, we did a lot of soul searching about exactly which area we should focus on. Now, we consider this SaaS area. SaaS area is the biggest revenue potential is in SaaS area. All types of applications that you can do. But it has a lot of this cultural and localness bias. Like you do some application, even between China and Taiwan, it's not very clear. Something that's popular in Taiwan automatically is popular in China, even though we speak more or less the same language and use more or less the same written forms, but it's still not very clear. And nowadays, you see that a lot of these SaaS applications are tied with the mobile devices. The mobile device service operator or the mobile device manufacturer, they all have their own application, and they encourage the ecosystem of the entire app market. So that constitutes a major percentage of these SaaS offerings. And for PaaS, it's really about platform, right? When we provide a platform for application developers to develop application. So to compete in PaaS is really the API game. Can I convince enough application developers to develop application on my platform? And we think this is this allows the bigger company that already have their own software development ecosystem to evolve, but not necessarily for newcomers to come in. So you need to win the so-called developers' mindshare. You need to get them in. So it's not just about the underlying hardware and everything. You need to already have that. So in this particular case, open source like LAMP or Windows.net has its own natural advantage. Because before cloud computing era, it already commands a lot of mindshare among the application developers. Now, IaaS is really about this data center. When we say cloud, it really means data center somewhere on the internet, right? So it is naturally tied with the hardware, right? Storage, server, network switches, and even endpoint devices and so on. And so at that point, we think that IaaS may be one of the angles that Taiwan should cut into this cloud computing business. But the one piece that's missing in the puzzle is system management software. We all know that we are very good at producing all kinds of hardware that you can name it. But the management software is just missing. These are all pretty much dominated by the players in North America. Okay. And then from a sort of a needs point of view, so at that point we decided maybe IaaS is one direction to go, but then we still need to do some sort of intelligence gathering. In the last about 12 months, we're starting to see something like this. If you take, especially you take Japan as an example, after 3/11 incident, that more and more the Japanese carriers start to feel the squeeze. So the problem is like this, that Amazon Web Service, this AWS, is knocking on the door of the Japanese market. So the carriers are thinking that, okay, AWS is coming in, and AWS already provided this IaaS service. Then I should respond. NTT, KDDI, SoftBank, they need to respond. So when they respond, they think, how come my price cannot be competitive with AWS? AWS is a foreign entity coming to Japanese market, and yet their price is more competitive than domestic offering. What's happening? And then try to learn from AWS. And then they figure out AWS actually purchased hardware from the Taiwanese ODM directly. they bypass a lot of these name brand players. That's number one. So on the hardware side, it already efficiently leverages the enormous ODM basis provided by the Taiwanese companies. Second, from the software point of view, the entire AWS software is developed by the AWS engineers. It's not something that you get from commercial offerings like VMware, Microsoft, Oracle put together, and then you provide AWS. It's not like that. It's AWS owns the software talents to develop the software suite required to run the AWS. NTT cannot do it, KDDI cannot do it, SoftBank cannot do it. And that's why AWS price is so competitive compared to Japanese carrier. So that's their their problem. So how can they actually beat AWS if they just take a traditional approach? Like existing solutions are too expensive, and even if they can afford existing solution, it's too complicated to put them together. There's no guarantee they will pull it off. So their wish list is it possible to come up with some kind of software solution they can do exactly what AWS can do and yet in a cheaper way. And on the hardware side, can they learn from AWS to buy this hardware directly from Taiwanese ODM companies? That's why you hear Quanta and companies like Quanta, they are providing solution to Google or Facebook. That's what it means, that there's no need to go to name brand company like HP, Dell, and IBM. Just go to the guys behind them, and then you can get exactly more or less the same thing. And anyway, most of the designs are done by Facebook and Google people. They just need somebody to actually take the spec and run. And that's what these Taiwanese ODM companies can do. And the other trend is that in the last probably 2 years, this open cloud computing model is raging. A lot of this open cloud computing model or architecture or technology is more and more becoming mature. And the first one is so-called Openstack, which is really, stack means a software stack. Now, Openstack means open software stack used to run a data center, and that's the software. And in the middle is Open Compute, which is pioneered by, initiated by Facebook. Basically, Facebook thinks that every year I probably spend $1 billion on hardware, IT infrastructure. Why should I be dictated by the vendors? I am a big guy. I know what I want. Of course, I define the spec. Okay, that's the Facebook thinking. I have a $1 billion purchase power, and I want to have this kind of server, this kind of storage box, this kind of network switch. You guys, listen to me, do this for me, and then you have this much market. But Facebook thinks that if Facebook just keep this to itself, that's what, for example, Google and Microsoft do. They also have a big volume, but they prefer to keep the technology to themselves. Facebook takes a different approach. It thinks that maybe I should open this up. Whatever server spec, storage spec, rack design, network, and so on, maybe I should open it up. What's the advantage of opening it up to Facebook? Facebook is thinking that if I open it up and then make them become standard spec, then there will be multiple sources. Multiple vendors can provide them and let them compete. Then my price will be better. And that's, of course, a good thing. But that also prevents a very good opportunity for Taiwanese ODM company to come into this space. Essentially, we have an interesting phenomenon. There's a brand, in this case, hardware brand. There's a brand called Facebook brand, if you will, OCP, Open Compute Project. But the guy who promotes the brand, Facebook, doesn't sell hardware. He just wants to promote it. And the guy that actually supply it are Taiwanese company. So we now have a funny situation. A brand that's not exactly owned by Facebook because it doesn't make money out of it. But whoever makes money out of it doesn't really own it because it doesn't really define the spec. And so that's the current situation. But that represents a golden opportunity for these Taiwanese companies to step in. Now, it seems to have effectively a brand, except that it's not called Quanta brand or any brand, it's called OCP brand. And most of the suppliers are from Taiwanese companies. So that's a very good thing. That's a very good thing, a very good opportunity. And the third area is in the network areas. It's called open networking or software-defined network. That's also the same thing, but it probably represents a smaller force compared to the other two. Now for Openstack, let me say a few words. Openstack, it's not just an open source. There are a lot of open source cloud management software, Cloud Stack, and Nebula, and a bunch of them. Now, the significance or commercial significance of Openstack is not so much that it's just another open source software. It's not. It's open source, all right, but that's not why it is so popular. By now, probably in the last Openstack conference, there are probably more than 3,000 people show up. A lot of the guys, they want to make money out of Openstack. It's not just for academic interest or just for people to understand what's going on there. And it tries to present an ecosystem. So it defines a so-called OpenStack core, and which is open source. But then also a set of API for third-party component to plug in. It's because of this well-defined API and the opportunity for third-party vendors to plug in. That's why OpenStack is so significant. Everybody gets to make some money out of it, all right? And that's why it creates an ecosystem that's meaningful and commercially relevant. So that's also a very good opportunity for Taiwanese company. Remember, we don't have anything. Right? Previously, we do a lot of things at the hardware, and even for the hardware, we do ODM. We are behind branded sort of companies. But now at the hardware side, because of OCP, now we more or less have some sort of brand. And then we want to step up to provide software. But then previously people might say, you never done software in your life. How come you can claim they want to provide a software solution to us? And then we say we are OpenStack compatible. Then it provides, gives a legitimacy to whatever this is cloud software solutions provided by Taiwanese companies, because we are riding on the bandwagon of OpenStack. So I want to briefly talk about sort of on the technology side, what does the Taiwan's cloud computing have achieved in the last like 2 or 3 years. So on the system software side, we have E3, we have III, and we have Trend Micro, we have Chunghwa Telecom and Asus. They are all doing reasonably good job of inching toward this presumably pretty difficult area. How to make robust and scalable and production-grade system software. And on the hardware side, we already know there are people who are doing container computer like this Inventec, Wistron, and Delta. And there are people working on open compute related project like Quanta, is a subsidiary, QCT, Wistron subsidiary, WeWin, and Delta. Delta is always very successful in providing power-related equipment. And then there are network devices, OpenFlow, corresponding to this open networking. And then there are other more miscellaneous, like basically people start to do cloud-enabled devices and Alpha Network and D-Links. They used to be in the network space, but now they move into that space. It's also pretty successful. On the market side, so our companies already become to be reasonably successful in providing these hardware devices to them by passing the name brand. So the evolution is always starting from the server, and then storage, and then network. Like this also reflects the maturity of the technology that our ODM company has. Like a lot of these things is, in some senses, is more and more software intensive. Right? For example, on a network switch, if you get Qualcomm's chipset and build a port, and then plug in all cable and so on, that's a switch, all right, but it doesn't have a soul. You need a lot of software on it to implement all the network protocol in order for it to be a real network switches. And so it becomes more and more challenging, and we are inching toward it in the right direction. And then there are this sort of cloud management software that we want to enter sort of China's private cloud market. That's also have some success. And then there's this also cloud appliances model that also have some success as well. So the next step is one thing that we want to do is we want to be more active in the open so cloud computing technology, this forum and committee. So the think of it is something like WiMAX, right? It used to be the case that people would define these 3G, 4G standards, and we just just do it. And people ask us to produce something according to the spec, then we do it. But now we want to change the game a little bit. We want to actively participate in the constructing and in the technical specification of OpenStack, Open Compute, and Open Network. And that represents a very good opportunity for us to move up in the ecosystem. And the other thing that we want to do is this notion of from mobile device to to mobile device plus backend cloud. So more and more, the source of a mobile device is defined by the backend cloud services. So it's conceivable in the future when you ODM a mobile device for somebody, it's not just the mobile device, but also the set of cloud application behind it, right? And that's also a very significant direction for our ODM company. Right? More and more, you already see that, right? Today, if you ask MediaTek probably tell you that they are a software company, even though their product is that IC, but the selling point is the entire sort of the complete software suite that goes with it. And I claim that eventually they probably have to provide not only the software suite that goes with that mobile device, but also the backend cloud applications as well. And then there are certain cloud people has been touted it as a solution for other wireless access problem, like China Mobile is advocating this cloud-based radio access network or cloud-based wireless LAN management and so on. And finally, the next battleground behind the cloud computing is probably big data. That's what everybody is talking about. Now that you have the infrastructure in place, of course, you can do all kinds of social network, all kinds of gaming and stuff. Those are all good applications, nothing wrong with that. But probably the next battleground is just when you collect all sorts of information, including IoT, end-to-end, and all kinds of information, you need to analyze them, right? It's not just collecting data for collecting data's sake. You really want to make use of it. And cloud, big data seems to the next wave to go. So in conclusion, the thing I see in the last 3 years in the Taiwan's cloud computing industry, if you ask me to summarize in 3 words, it's software, software, software. Right? That's what everybody is talking about. Now, I observed that in Taiwan, the word, when people use software, we are moving from the lip service age, that software is important, to sort of genuine convert, that you truly believe in it. And then eventually you take your money out and invest in it. So now we are more or less somewhere here, okay? We are somewhere here. That you see people really are willing to, big guys, right, big boss, they are willing to invest money in software. And this requires patience, and you need to really determine and willing to invest in it. And we have success stories, right? The last success story is IC industry. Since when I was a graduate student, back in the early 80s, all the kinds of ICs that Taiwanese company can produce are sort of, people make fun of them. They call them heaters. They do nothing but generate heat, right? Doesn't really produce, act the behavior what it is supposed to do. It just generates a lot of heat. But now look at, we are the world's #2 semiconductor country in the world, right? So, but it takes 20 years, roughly 20 years, starting from E3's recruiting, transfer that RCA technology to 1995, where you have a set of IC company really booming. Right? So I think we'll take a similar amount of effort to get there, with respect to the software. And finally, we need to learn how to sell software, right? It's always about selling, yes. In technology side, people like me can help, but at the end of the day, it's still selling, right? We need to know how to sell this kind of software. It's not ODM model, right? In the case of ODM model, I only have to service like 5 customers in the world. HP give me 100 billion US Taiwanese dollars, and they'll give me 50 billion Taiwanese dollar business, and that's it. But now we are talking about a very large number of customers, and each customer will take a long time to service and so on. And that's a very, very different service model. But I think that we are getting there. We are learning how to master this kind of pre-sale and post-sale tactics, and we think we will get there eventually. Okay, so that's all I have. Thank you.
谢谢各位，我们的